TFL EV is brought to you by Flow Charger, maker of reliable, high-quality charging stations for your electric vehicle.
Hey everybody, I've got a really great video for you today because we are comparing two affordable EVs to find out which one is best. We've got the Chevrolet Bolt EV and the Mini Cooper SE, and in this video we are going to compare the specs, the design, the interiors, and of course the driving dynamics to find out which one should you buy. Now the whole emphasis of this video is to prove you don't need to spend $60,000, $70,000, $80,000 to get into a brand new electric car. What we have here behind me are two great options which can be had for 30 grand or even less. And we're gonna dive into that right now. Now let's start with this blue car behind me. This is the Mini Cooper SE. It debuted for the 2020 model year, and it is a fully electric version of the iconic Mini Cooper. So it is a two-door hatchback, and it recently received a very big price cut. So the 2023 model year started at over $34,000, but for 2024 the price has dropped to $30,900. That is a significant price drop, and the reason that has occurred is for the previous model years they actually eliminated the base model, but it's back for 2024, making this one of the cheapest new EVs on the market. Now, this car offers a lot of quality and a lot of fun to drive for the money. So what I find with the Cooper SE is that it is genuinely some of the most fun you can have on four wheels with an electric powertrain. And we'll talk about that during the driving portion. Now, of course, it's also one of the smallest new cars you can buy. So it's only two doors. Pretty limited back seat capability, right? But all of that makes it such a great experience out on the road. Now let's contrast that to the Chevrolet Bolt EV. This is the second generation of Chevrolet Bolt. This one is a 2022, and the price in this guy, $27,000. Officially, I think it starts at $27,495. So we're looking at some $2,500, $3,000 less than the Mini Cooper SE. And this, in contrast to the Mini, is also a small front-wheel drive car, but this one is a full four-door hatchback that offers a lot more room and versatility compared to the Cooper SE, but certainly a lot less fun in the driving dynamics, and we'll get into all that here in a second. Now let's start by talking about range per dollar. So the Mini Cooper SE comes equipped with a 32.6 kilowatt hour battery. It's essentially the same powertrain that you'd find in the BMW i3. It's rated at 114 miles of range, which does sound pretty limited by 2022, 2023 standards. But I've owned this car now for a bunch of months. We've actually owned it since middle of 2021, so going on close to 2 years. And in the summer, on the OEM wheels and tires, easily get 120, even 130 miles on a charge. That makes this a great commuter. So if you actually pay attention to your daily driving habits, I think you'll find most folks, especially in relatively urban environments, don't drive more than 30, 40, 50 miles in a day. And this car is perfect for that, especially when you consider how fun it is to drive. Now, compared that to the Bolt has 259 miles of range out of a 65 kilowatt hour battery. So double the battery capacity in the Bolt and double the range. This car is much better for longer trips, right? If you have to visit the in-laws out in the country, this car is going to do that much more effectively. Now, if you look at the charging situation, neither of these cars are going to be very good long-distance road trippers because they both have fairly limited DC fast charging rates. So the Mini peaks at 50 kilowatts. You plug it into the back here, and they say 0 to 80% charge in roughly 30 minutes. And then the Chevy Bolt, well, the charge port is actually located up here on the front left panel. Also peaks at right around 50, 55 kilowatts, and they say 100 miles range gained in 30 minutes. So roughly the same charging speed. I will say the charging curve on the Mini is a little bit better. It holds higher charge rates deeper into the battery. So if you really had to go on a trip, even though this car has a shorter range, I think you could realistically get more charge in 30 minutes than compared to the Chevrolet. But the point is, if you want to drive across country, neither of these cars are going to be a great option. Now let's talk about availability, right? So the Chevrolet Bolt is out in dealerships. However, it is hard to find these cars without dealer markup. So this car we were able to get without the dealer markup out the door like 27-ish, but a lot of dealers are putting on a couple $1,000 markups. Now the Mini is an interesting story. This car is pretty hard to get. There are still wait times if you were to custom order one, and it really has a cult following, which is interesting. So these cars are pretty tricky to buy. However, they can be purchased used. And this exact Mini, my car, is up for auction right now over at tflbids.com. I'm really sad to see it go. I'm selling it just because we've done every video we could possibly do with the Mini Cooper SE. It's time to send it to a new home. But I actually set the reserve below what I think is the market value because I'd love to see it go to a TFL viewer, and we'll talk about some of the logistics there in a second. But both of these cars can be purchased either new or used. In the used market, both of them are going to go for pretty similar to MSRP, so high 20s, low 30s in that case. However, it's worth noting the Chevrolet Bolt, if you do buy it new, does qualify for the full $7,500 federal tax credit. It's assembled here in the United States, and the Mini, if you buy it new, does not qualify for that tax credit because it is assembled in the UK. All right, let's talk about the interiors a little bit, and we're going to start with the Mini Cooper SE. Now, it's very hard to describe the quality that you get when you buy a Mini Cooper SE, right? So most folks look at this car and they think, ooh, pretty high MSRP, not a lot of range, it's not worth it. But what you got to remember about Mini is it's a company owned by BMW, and Mini focuses on quality and fit and finish on the interior almost more than any other maker, I would say. So the touch points on this car, and even the non-touch points, have such a high quality fit and finish to them that it really is a fantastic place to spend time, between this dual contrast between this fantastic woven material and these leather bolsters, the leather wrapped steering wheel, which feels like it could be off of a Rolls Royce, this really interesting finish across the dash, the two-tone panels here, the dual pane sunroofs. This car gives you a ton of luxury for the money, and I'm not even talking about like features and connectivity. It offers that too, but just the feeling of build quality in here is second to none. When Mini introduced the gas models back in the early 2000s back to the States, right, they had a reputation for not being very high quality. Well, it took them a few generations, but this new Mini is built like an absolute tank. I have not read of hardly any issues with these Minis on the forums, online. They've been out for a few years. All the problems are sorted out, and they are just an absolute unit of a vehicle. But I love the interior, and not only from a quality material standpoint, but like a design finish. You got these really cool toggle switches in the bottom with that start button there. You've got this fantastic round motive all throughout with these quirky little circular stalks here, and just it's such a fun place to spend time. It's very airy, very open, and easily one of my favorite new car interiors. But of course, you do pay for that, right? So this Mini, MSRP when new, this is a 2022 model year, was like $37,000. This was a Signature Plus trim with a lot of cool features like this three-tone roof. Even the exterior of this car, I think, has a lot of interesting design to it. This is real paint that Mini uses to go from purple to blue to black, all on this one blended panel, and extremely expensive for them to do. Now let's compare that to the inside of the Chevrolet Bolt. Now, as you open the door, right, you're greeted by far more black plastics. Now, I'm not saying that this is a bad interior, but in terms of a design standpoint and in terms of kind of a fit and finish standpoint, it is far inferior to the Mini, I have to say. So like the seats are much more basic. They don't have the same bolstering. They don't have the same design. The dash layout, a lot more kind of flat black, a lot more kind of standard silver, not a lot of contrast, right? The layout of the switches, very logical, but not a ton of fun compared to the Mini Cooper SE. However, having said that, it is still an extremely functional interior. Chevrolet offers a lot of tech for the money, from this giant screen, wireless Apple CarPlay, wireless Android Auto, pretty decent stereo, automatic climate control on this model. So you get a lot of standard features for your money, just not a lot of kind of pizzazz or interest on the interior of this Chevrolet Bolt. But what you do get a lot more of is trunk space, and I do mean that in a big way. So the Mini Cooper SE, when you pop open the trunk here, I got my little cheat sheet because I could never remember trunk numbers. You get up to 34 cubic feet worth of space. The seats fold down quite easily, and you get a flat floor, but it's a pretty small trunk, all things considered. Now, if you compare that to the Chevrolet, well, the Chevrolet offers 57 cubic feet worth of space. So if you want to pop that trunk there case, you can kind of see the difference. Seats also fold down in the Bolt, gives you a lot of room back here to kind of fit larger items. So much larger place to kind of put stuff in the back of the Chevy. Now let's compare rear seat legroom. Obviously, the Mini has just 2 doors to get into the back seat. Fold the seat forward and then slide it, and much smaller than the Chevrolet. Actually, once you're back here, it's pretty comfortable, and you have pretty decent headroom considering the size of the vehicle, but this is more of a place for kids or a place for short trips, whereas in the Chevrolet, the rear seat is positively ginormous. So as you can see, if I open this door, even behind my driving position, 6 feet tall, I get a lot of legroom and I get plenty of headroom. So in terms of space, you're comparing a Mini Cooper to a full-size Chevrolet. There's nothing really all that mini about the Chevrolet in terms of its size. But the driving dynamics of the Cooper are really where we're going to see some huge differences when compared to the Chevy. So Case, why don't you hop in and we'll take it for a spin. Now this Mini on paper has 180 horsepower, which doesn't sound like a whole ton, but it shoots above its weight class. They say 0 to 60 in 6.9 seconds. Got a couple different drive modes here. We're going to stick it up into the sport mode. And then we have a couple of different regeneration modes here. We're going to go into the high regen setting. And we'll go ahead and take this beast for a spin and see how it performs. Front wheel drive, of course. But Mini spent a huge amount of time on developing the suspension architecture in this car and a pretty sophisticated rear suspension setup. And what that translates to is a car that's easily as fun to drive, if not more fun to drive, than its gasoline counterpart. So it drives like a German BMW, and which is to say it handles the bends with so much confidence. The steering is precise, the ratio is pretty quick, and if you're looking to really rip around on a back road, this Mini is one of the most fun out there. It'll out-accelerate just about anything in a straight line. If you need to zip out in front of traffic, it will do so with a lot of confidence. We'll make sure this Nissan is turning here, and then we'll give it a taste of the beans. Full throttle, kind of builds into it, and then you get a big wave of torque, about 35-40, and then strong regen as you let off the brakes. But the other thing about the Mini is it's much more quiet in here than the Chevrolet, and it's a lot better assembled than the Chevrolet, I have to say, in terms of the way that the panels fit within each other. It's just one cohesive block of granite is what it feels like. But the steering is fun, the brakes are really good, the powertrain is very well sorted, and it gives you a lot of feedback in what is a class of car, the electric car, that's typically not viewed as much fun. I actually think that this car is more fun to drive than even a lot of Teslas, right? Because it's just so small. You can make a U-turn anywhere you need to, and then you can really zip in and out of traffic, give it a squirt of the beans, and off you go. You can disable traction control in this car fully too by pushing and holding the buttons. And the other thing too is if you want a lot of luxury features, they're available. Heated seats, a heated steering wheel. I do believe adaptive cruise is an option in these cars. You got the dual pane sunroofs, which open and close like such. So really a lot of premium features that you do pay for, but it makes it a very fun driving experience. And this is an excellent commuter. Really is great. Now the range, 114 on paper. I think it's a little underrated. In the winter, it's pretty spot on, especially with these winter tires. In the summer, with the factory power spoke wheels, the factory summer tires, like I said, I often do 120 plus without a lot of issue. And then if you live in a place like Colorado where you have a pretty good charging infrastructure, if you do need to stop to extend that range to 200, you're going to be there for, I don't know, 15 minutes. Get yourself a sandwich and then hit the road. So I've had no issues with the range on this car, even though that certainly is going to be a limiting factor for many. But let's see how the driving experience in the Mini compares to the driving experience in the Chevrolet Bolt. Tiny little backup camera. Don't like that very much. All right. I don't think Mini anticipated this to be as big of a success as they planned. I mean, I think they sell something like 4,000 of these every year. Which for a relatively small car brand is pretty impressive. It's actually, I think, their single best-selling individual model, the Mini Cooper SE, and they just can't build enough of them to keep up with demand. And part of the appeal of the Mini too is they're very personalizable. So there's a lot of colors, lots of cool options. That one has the ghost stripes, which is fantastic, and all of that jazz. So very individualized car, which is fun. Now jumping into the Chevrolet, push button transmission, pull back for a drive, and off we go. The Chevrolet is a very simple, easy car to drive. You know, it's not nearly as fun as the Mini. You sit up taller, feels a lot narrower. The suspension isn't as sorted, right? You do get some crashy, jars throughout the cabin when you hit the big bumps, but it still is an excellent commuter. 200 horsepower. This has a much larger battery. When you go to accelerate hard, it gives you a nice pull. We actually drag raced these cars. The Mini was just a little bit quicker, but the Chevrolet, still very fun to drive on your daily commute. A lot more torque steer in the Chevrolet, a lot less feedback through the steering compared to the Mini, and a little bit louder in here, especially on the highway. But your adventure goes so much further in the Chevrolet compared to the Mini, almost 260 miles, that I think for a lot of folks, this car probably does make more sense. Now, as a car enthusiast, someone that loves the driving experience, the Mini is much better. But as for someone that's just looking for an affordable electric car to commute to work, to run errands, and to go to the store, the Chevrolet makes a lot more sense, right? You can fit a lot more things in the trunk. You can fit a lot more kids in the back seat if you need to. This is a 5-seater versus a 4-seater in the Mini. And sure, the quality of materials in here isn't up to the same standard as the Mini, but it still is a very compliant place to spend time. It still has really good, easy to use, simple technology. Both these cars are such winners. I love the fact that these manufacturers, and there's not a ton of them, but a few manufacturers are focusing on the lower end of the market. I would love if these cars were $20,000, $25,000 instead of $27,000, $30,000. But when you consider that, even a base ID4 starts in the high 30s, $37,000. Same thing with the Mustang Mach-E. The fact that these manufacturers can build and sell the level of car that they can at this price point is very impressive. So I'm glad that these two are on the market and are great options, both of them, regardless whether you want the fun to drive, shorter range city car or the less fun to drive but more usable family car. They're just such great options for the money, and I would definitely worth considering them. And when you consider too the savings costs in terms of maintenance and brakes, right? They both have excellent regen systems. You save huge money on brake pads and brake rotors over the time that you own the car because you're not using those friction brakes. It makes a huge amount of sense for most folks, even folks that are potentially a little bit anti-EV. All right, let's go close it up and talk about which one wins the comparison. Well, for me, the answer is pretty simple, right? I own this exact Mini. It's my car, so that's the choice I made. Because of my lifestyle, because of the amount I drive, it just makes more sense, and it's a lot more fun. But if you're looking for a car that has a lot more range and a lot more space, you just can't beat the Chevrolet. I love the Bolt EV so much for what it brings to the table. And guys, as always, if you want to bid on this exact car, click on the link in the comment section below. It's up for auction over at tflbids.com. I would love it, love it, love it if a TFL EV owner would actually snap it up and continue its journey and story. But as always, thank you so much for watching. This has been Tommy behind the camera case. We'll see you in another episode.